Good morning, Vajragupta here again. So I'm going to talk about another couple of verses from the Dhammapada. And these are still from the first section. Yes, they are. Yeah. So it's verses 11 and 12. Those who mistake the shadow for the substance and the substance for the shadow never arrive at reality, but follow false aims. Those who know the substance as the substance and the shadow as the shadow arrive at reality and follow right aims. So what's this about, the shadow and reality? Well, it's really about truth and ignorance. It's about the way that we perceive the world in a very topsy-turvy way. We see it out of our own perspective. But we believe that our perspective has some sort of reality. I mean, it doesn't take a lot to think that if you see something a particular way and I see it in a different way, how can we decide who is, in inverted commas, right? There can't possibly be, can there? So we all see the world in a different way. Of course there are similarities. But, as soon as we open our eyes, we're actually starting to judge. So it's very difficult to see something in its purity, in its natural state, you could say. And certainly that's the case with other people. We don't see them objectively. We see them very subjectively. And we can have views based on very, very little, on somebody's age, on somebody's hairstyle. Well, it's interesting because when I thought of doing these little talks, I hadn't done them for quite a long time. And because I'm the age I am, I'm getting up pretty old now, I thought, that's not going to be very attractive to people. Okay, I wonder if I could set up some kind of avatar to speak for me. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that is what I thought. Because, in a way, it's not kind of cool to be old, is it? It's cool to be young and beautiful and well-dressed and all that. But, in a way, it's just a very false way of looking at things. And it's a way that we're fed by society to believe in as well. We believe that we can kind of hold back old age, that we can be healthy, that we can be slim, whatever the fashion is, that we can do that. And actually, it's it's a massive way that we make ourselves very unhappy. It causes us suffering because we're trying to be something that we're not. We're trying to fit in. We're trying to be like everyone else. So, no, I decided, okay, I'm the age I am who I am. And, if people don't want to look at little videos that speak something of the Dharma because of that, that's fine as well. So back to shadows and substance. So this is really about truth, about reality, about truth, and about ignorance, about our ignorance. So, what is the truth? That's the question, isn't it? What is the truth? I think one of the most helpful teachings of the Dharma is actually that of the three laksanas, what's called the three laksanas, which means the three marks of conditioned existence. So everything on our earth, everything on our planet, everything in the world, everything is conditioned. It's it's caused by certain conditions coming together. And at some point, those conditions will change. So just to mention the three laksanas first, and then I'll go into them a bit. So the first one is impermanence. Everything is impermanence. The second is everything is basically unsatisfactory. And the third is that everything is insubstantial. It doesn't have a kind of core essence, which is how we think of ourselves. We think of ourselves as having this core essence, something that is me, essentially me. And, we hope, even sometimes if we believe in rebirth, that that's going to go with us, some essential thing. And certainly other religions see that we have got some essence, some soul that is going to be passed on from life to life. So Buddhism doesn't hold with that. So what is it that's passed on? Well, it's our tendencies. It's those deep ruts and grooves that we've made for ourselves. Those habitual ways of being that create, you could say, some kind of mark. And that is both positive and negative. I mean, they're not all negative by any means, but positive. So, for example, meditation is a very, very positive karmic imprint that we make for ourselves. So it's great to know that, we haven't got to do a lot. We've just got to find the path, live an ethical life, meditate, and find out the truth for ourselves. So impermanence, we know everything is impermanent. As I was saying yesterday, we know we're going to die, but somehow we hide truths from ourselves. So, there's different levels of understanding impermanence. So, of course, we look around us and it's summer outside at the moment. Everything's blossoming. Everything's changing. Once those trees were bare and now they have leaves on them, and we know that all those leaves will fall off. Big deal. So what? We know everything changes. But if we really knew that everything changed and had to change, we wouldn't get so upset about stuff. We wouldn't get so emotional when things go wrong, when things change that we don't want to change. So, impermanence has both a letting go side. We have to learn how to let go without trying to hold on. And that can be very difficult. But it also has a positive side in that, thank goodness, things change, We don't have to live a second-rate life that we don't really want to be living. Now, I'm not saying it's easy to change. It isn't. But we have to be brave, courageous, and make those decisions, If we're in a destructive relationship, we have to get out of it. If we don't, we're kind of giving away our life, you could say. But the biggest letting go that we have to do, of course, is death. And as I said yesterday, I really think that Buddhism is a fantastic preparation for death. Because when we really embrace the facts of reality, there's a liberation to it. We're not running away. It's liberating because we're not sticking our head in the sand. When we try and avoid painful things, they push even harder. That's the way it works. That's the way our psychology works. Try and push away all those painful feelings and they'll come back. So, but, often when we face our worst enemy, when we really face it, we find it wasn't so bad after all. So a deeper level of understanding impermanence is actually understanding that not only is nothing permanent, but nothing really exists. So I just want to say a couple of words about that. So, for something to be impermanent, it had to exist in the first place. But actually, things are always either just coming into being or fading away. So, in other words, everything is a process. And this is really important to take on board. Everything is just a process. And we too are a process. From the minute we were born, cells in our body start to die and other cells renew themselves. So this process is going on all the time. And the more we embrace that and don't resist it, the happier we will be, because we'll make the most, as I was saying about certain examples I gave you yesterday, about when people are dying and when they suddenly appreciate very small things that are around them, seeing for the first time. So because things are impermanent, they are also unsatisfactory. So the Buddha had a list of things that were unsatisfactory, and most of them are very easy. Well, all of them really are easy to understand. Perhaps birth is the hardest one. We think of birth as being, isn't it wonderful, a new baby born into the world and a new kitten and so on. But actually, from the time parents give birth, they are really anxious and worried about, they want to protect this little being who is completely helpless. Then they have the awful thing of sending their kid to school. They don't know who's going to be teaching them or what they're going to be taught or who's going to be bullying them at school. So the whole thing is fraught with, if not anxiety, certainly unsatisfactoriness. There's fear. There's basic fear. So even birth is ultimately unsatisfactory. So there's birth, there's old age. Who wants to get old? No one wants to get old. But it's going to happen, unless you die when you're young. And we can ignore old people as much as we like, but actually it's going to happen to us. We won't always have the energy. We won't always be running around. So birth, old age, sickness, we can't help but get sick. And, perhaps COVID was a real eye-opener for many people. Okay, a lot of people that died of COVID did have other health issues, but not everybody by any means. In that first flush of COVID, the first batch, thousands of people died. And everybody became aware, at least for a short while, that actually this didn't just apply to everyone else. It could be us. And, most sensible people wore masks and took precautions against not getting that initial bout of COVID. So, birth, old age, sickness and death. But then there's also not getting what we want. That's another inevitable, isn't it? We don't always get what we want. And also there's having to put up with what we don't want. That too. We don't get what we want, and we often have to tolerate what we don't want. How many people are in jobs that they don't want to be doing and they don't know how to get out of it because maybe they've got a mortgage and children and a family and lots of things that they want. So putting up with what we don't want to have to put up with. So, I think when I first came to Buddhism, I didn't like all the talk about suffering and unsatisfactoriness, because, I'd had a pretty good life up till then and I was enjoying myself, and I thought, well, why do they go on about that? It's not so bad. But actually look beneath the surface and you see that no, life is going to be like that. So the Buddha said there's a way out. Wow. Okay, that's pretty exciting if there is a way out. And funnily enough, I wouldn't say that the way out is only enlightenment, although I'm sure a lot of Buddhists would say that. But we can, long before we're enlightened, long before we're enlightened, we can start getting out of this unsatisfactory state. How do we do that? Well, a lot of it is to do with meditation and Perhaps tomorrow I might do a meditation with us. But a lot of it is about seeing things as they really are, not mistaking the substance for the shadow. And the shadow for the substance. So how do we see things as they are? How do we do that? Well, the Buddha pointed out that one of the things that causes us so much suffering is grasping, is craving and then grasping. So just think about it. We have our 5 senses. Actually 6 senses, because in Buddhism we have our mind as well. So we have sight, hearing, taste, touch. What have I forgotten? Smell, that's it. Smell and thinking. So our senses make contact with the world. And as soon as they make contact, something happens. Something happens very quickly. And it is either like, dislike, or indifference. So that's happening all the time. Like, dislike, and indifference. And as soon as those things happen, we are either, if it's dislike, we're pushing away. If it's like, we're wanting to hold on, to pull it towards us. If it's indifference, we'll probably ignore it. So that wanting, well, it's interesting. You would think if you get what you want, that you would be satisfied. But unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. The more you get, the more you want. So, yeah, one of the... I think I did talk about guarding the senses, didn't I? I think I did. Yeah, guarding the senses is simply where you make choices about what you expose yourself to. So that's one thing you can do. The other is you can practice giving up something, temporarily, making an intention around that. So let's say you're addicted to sugar. You like sugar. Chocolate, maybe you'll decide you'll have a couple of days without. You don't overstretch yourself. It's much better to make an intention that you're going to keep, because success is a great motivator. We want to motivate ourselves. So yeah, at times I have done a year of no shopping. So that didn't mean I couldn't buy anything at all. I could buy food. What else was I allowing myself? I could buy myself essentials, like, if I needed a bar of soap, if I needed some shampoo, things like that. That was okay. But I couldn't buy anything new. I couldn't then look for another kind of soap or a new lippy or something. No, that was out. And yeah. A couple of times I've done that for a year, just to try and curb my love of shopping, really. It only works temporarily, I think. But actually being in those years was really rewarding. Really rewarding. Because what I noticed is I stopped that wanting all the time. I stopped thinking up new ideas for things that I would like. Anyway, I'm not suggesting that you try some elongated time of abstinence. But I suppose the truth is I find it quite an exciting thing to do. And I think it's because, don't we want to know what we really are? When we haven't got all our distractions. So for many years, I had a month each year of solitary retreat. And so I'd spend that time on my own. Plenty of food. It wasn't like living in hardship. but by no means living in hardship. But it was, living a very simple life. So I would go away from home, so I didn't have my usual distractions, no radio or anything like that. And I'd meditate, I'd study, I'd draw, I'd think about things. And it was a very, very rewarding time. And in a way, one of the thrills, I would say thrills really, about doing those was to find out how I am without my usual distractions. And one of the things that did shock me a bit was, because I think I mentioned before that actually I'm quite an aversive sort of person. I found I could get angry with absolutely anything. It didn't need anybody to be there to make me angry. I could just get angry about something really stupid. The fridge door getting stuck, or, my picture not working out, or, and I realised that, yes, our mind, we are responsible for our mind. And our mind is something that we need to get to know. And once we get to know it, we can do something about those weaknesses that we have that don't really benefit our life in any way. Yeah. So the 3 laksanas, coming back to those. So I've talked a bit about impermanence, and I've talked a bit about dukkha or unsatisfactoriness. And I'm just going to say a very few words about insubstantiality. So we imagine that we have this kind of essence to ourselves. And when we practice meditation and when we look for that essence, it's really hard to find it. In fact, it can't be found. So, when we look, it's like, does it have a shape? Does it have a colour? Where does it reside? Is it inside our body? Is it outside our body? Is it our personality? Is that what we think of as being ourself? But our personality changes, doesn't it? It certainly can change. I mean, yes, we can be very habitual, but, if I look back, if I look at a photo of myself 30 years ago, sometimes I think, who was that person? What on earth was she doing with her life? Maybe a bit longer than 30 years. But yeah, I look about when I was a young adult and I felt very different. I was very different. I responded to people very differently. Our personality does change. It can change. Our preferences change and so on. So this idea that we have of a self is something that we are making all the time. We're making it. We're creating it. And we do it by reinforcing all our habits, the things that we think about, how we react to others. And of course, it's not just us, it's other people as well. Particularly, I think you can see this within the family. Our parents treat us in a particular way. Perhaps we occupy a certain place in the family. Maybe we were the eldest and had all the responsibility. Maybe we were the last born and was the baby of the family and still are. So there's these ways in which we take on roles, and we can end up thinking that we haven't got any choice over those roles. But what I'm saying is, yes, we do. We can. It's not easy to make those changes, but we can. Okay, I think that's enough for one day. So I'll say bye and see you soon. And I think next time we'll do a meditation.